Welcome to The Source, where we combine the headlines with in-depth conversations with the newsmakers themselves. I'm Pinky Webb. Today on the program, President Rodrigo Duterte breaks his silence on the presence of Chinese ships in Philippine waters, reiterating his position that we can't do anything unless we trigger a war. Also, a medical group says hospitals remain full amid the implementation of stricter quarantine rules. How is the government faring in its COVID-19 response? And later, a senator says the rise of community pantries is a desperate call for help. Senator Panfilo Ping Lacson joins us live. Amid calls for President Rodrigo Duterte to denounce the continuing presence of Chinese vessels in the West Philippine Sea, Mr. Duterte reiterated his position that the country cannot do anything unless we go to war. But the chief executive says he would send military ships once China goes after oil and minerals in the area. Here's the president in his own words.
Baski na anong sabihin ng mga military, may iba dyan, alam ko na na walang ginawa. You know the cost of war. And if we go there and really to find out and to assert jurisdiction, he said it would be bloody. It would result in a violence that we cannot maybe win.
Let's go straight to the source of the story. We have Senator Panfilo Ping Lacson. Senator Lacson, welcome to the source. Maraming salamat po sa inyong oras.
Pinky, good morning, and good morning as well to the viewers.
So let's start with the West Philippine Sea, the issue on the West Philippine Sea. Ang sabi po ni Pangulo, he spoke last night, and he said the only way to really take back the West Philippine Sea is actually through force. In his words, ang sabi niya, you know the cost of war, as we played a while ago, and if we go there and assert jurisdiction, it will be bloody. It will result in violence that we cannot maybe win. Do you agree?
Pinky, he's the leader of our country, and he's the commander-in-chief of all armed forces. And he can think of anything and speak about anything except surrender. Remember, we have an arbitrary ruling in our favor, and it's permanent. Although it's unenforceable, there are so many things to think about except surrender. No? We cannot wave the white flag, so to speak.
Do you think he's surrendering or raising the white flag?
Well, that's the implication, because what message could it send to the armed forces, and especially to China, no? When we say we cannot avoid bloodshed? So that's inaction. Yes, we can, because he said we cannot retake without resorting to bloodshed. But, the Secretary of National Defense, no less, and even the Secretary of Foreign Affairs have spoken, and even the Chief of Staff of the Armed Forces of the Philippines. Ang sabi nila, we can build strong alliances with other countries, especially the Western countries and even the Western Pacific region, Australia, Japan, maraming paraan. But to speak of, parang ang implication, wala tayong gagawin, I think that's sending a wrong message.
And how do you feel that the president spoke that way and you interpret it in a way that he's raising the white flag? How do you feel as a senator, our position now dito sa West Philippine Sea? It's as if, paano ho ba, Senator Ping, pwede na lang ho pumunta yung mga Chinese boats, Chinese militia in the West Philippine Sea because of what the president said?
That's actually what's happening on the ground, or in the high seas. Kasi talagang inoccupy nila. The latest, yun yung Julian na Philippine Reef. Yung nauna, di ba, yung Scarborough and then Panatag, and now this is third major incursion. So kung wala talaga tayong gagawin at sasabihin natin, no, we cannot do anything but shed blood when we retake or try to retake those shoals, those territories, then ang implication, I'm not saying that he's actually raising the red flag, but that's the implication. And if the members of the officers and men of the armed forces would take it that way, then it could be, disastrous on the Philippine Philippine sovereignty.
So let's talk about that. He's accepting the current setup. Sabi po ni Pangulo, sabi niya, the West Philippine Sea is ours, and China says it's
Yeah.
actually theirs. Just as long, sabi ni Pangulo, as the fishermen, the Philippine Navy, the BFAR, and the Coast Guard can get in and out of the disputed waters, he's okay with that particular setup. Are you okay with that particular setup?
Tama naman yun, Pinky, kasi remember, EEC ito eh. Ang pag-aari natin, yung ilalim, di ba? And yung pwede namang mag-fishing, yung mga countries. Ang problema, yung mismong mga mangingisda natin, they're losing a lot because they themselves cannot fish anymore because they're being driven away by small boats or big boats by China.
Right. But that's the implication, sir. So if that is the setup, nandun po yung kanilang mga dambuhalang barko, yung atin po halos hindi makapasok, nauubusan ho tayo, hindi ba? And if we talk about the West Philippine Sea, that's really what, under the United Nations Convention on the Law of the Sea, that
Yes.
it really looks into the 200 nautical miles. For example, let's just put the situation here in place. Doon po sa Julian Felipe Reef, China was saying that it's traditional fishing. But hindi ho ba, dahil nandun po yun, bahagi po yun ng ating exclusive economic zone, hindi ho ba dapat tayo lang ang pwedeng mangisda doon sa lugar na yon?
Well, exclusive economic zone, ano? Ang ibig sabihin, underneath the water, sa atin yun eh, yung mga resources. And that would include yung corals, yung fish, yung mga taklobo, and everything else, ano? So kung isusurrender natin yon and we just allow the Chinese to just drive away our fishermen, hindi naman natin din pinagbabawalan na mangisda rin yung mga ibang neighboring countries. Di ba? Parang common fishing ground yan eh. But to allow our fishermen to lose the right or the right to fish in those waters, yun ang problema.
Yung Mutual Defense Treaty, Senator Lacson, ang sabi po ni Pangulo, that only covers the Philippines being protected by the US if the Philippines is being attacked. However, he says it does not cover if the Philippines is actually the one who initiates a war. Tama ho ba to? Is that the correct interpretation under the Mutual Defense Treaty?
Yes, tama yon. Kasi any attack on a vessel, government vessel, on either party, the United States or the Philippines, deemed as an attack on the other party. Yun ang implication ng Mutual Defense Treaty. And the United States, they're more than willing to really assist by way of maintaining the balance of power. Yun lang naman ang hinihingi natin to avoid war, because we cannot really afford a third world war. On a massive scale. So maraming paraan at maraming pwedeng isipin paraan. Pero coming from the Commander-in-Chief himself na we cannot do anything, we cannot retake because without resorting to bloodshed, para may mga implications yung sinasabi ko doon sa kanyang statement, being the leader of the country.
So
it could send the wrong message. That's what I'm saying.
Okay, but what should we do? I mean, when you look at it, are diplomatic protests enough? Sending the Navy, sending BR boats, and also the Coast Guard. Do you think that is enough?
Well, ang yung diplomatic protest, Pinky, is just a point of information. It has gone yung resulta ng mga diplomatic protest natin, inignore naman ng China. So we could think of some other means to protect our waters. Isa na nga yun because we have international agreements with other countries and we can build stronger alliances with those countries, even those not covered by international agreements. Like yung mga potential or mga traditional na allies natin. Japan, for example, is a natural ally because meron ding issue with China in Japan. And I heard that the United States and Japan have already expressed their willingness to build much stronger alliances with the Philippines. So let's work along that line. Hindi yung parang don't feel that we're alone. because we really cannot win a war against China because population-wise, 1/10 lang tayo, less than 1/10 ng population ng China. And military-wise, talagang no contest. But why would we sulk in a corner, and think along that line when there are other countries, stronger countries, even Europe, they're willing to assist us through the EU. So yun lang naman ang point ko, Pinky. And the least that the president can do perhaps is to just not talk about yung ganong or making statements to a point na parang merong implikasyon nga ng surrender.
Okay.
Or resignation for that matter.
Senator, there are also other recommendations such as maglagay po tayo ng barko doon in and around the Julian Felipe Reef, like what we did in Ayungin Shoal, that's one. Or also there was an international expert who had suggested that ang dami pa pong areas doon na unoccupied. We can start building even just a small outpost. Do you agree that that needs to be done in order to protect our exclusive economic zone?
Well, another thing is we can do some joint military exercises with other countries like the United States kasi meron na tayo existing BFA. So why don't we harness yung ganong opportunity to have or more frequent, for that matter, joint military exercise or exercises with the United States along with other countries perhaps kasi Australia meron din tayong SOPA. So pwede naman yon. Pero we cannot really stand alone in a situation like this. But ang problema kasi nag-shift yung more independent yung naging foreign policy under President Duterte. And that's good, no? But are we really imposing an independent foreign policy? Parang hindi rin because we're more leaned towards China. Yun ang yung problema. And while we're treating China as our friend, as our ally, parang hindi naman reciprocated properly.
Do you think China is being a friend to the Philippines?
Yun nga, sabi ko, hindi naman properly reciprocated or fairly reciprocated. Tayo, masyado tayong friendly, but these incursions and even resorting to some arrogant pronouncements against our fishermen, our Coast Guard, and even our country itself, yun ang problema. So parang, di ba, symbiotic dapat yan eh. When we treat somebody as a friend, we expect that we should be treated the same way.
So are we getting the raw end of the deal?
Well, you can say that, Pinky, kasi sa nangyayari, tuloy-tuloy lang yung incursions. Hihintayin pa ba natin na yung ilang major islands? Remember, yung area na yan, very rich in mineral and natural resources. Ang wealth na nasa ilalim niyan, unimaginable, quoting Senator Enrile, because when I talked to him once, ang sabi niya, we're talking hundreds of billions of barrels of natural gas and oil. So there you go, Pinky.
Actually, that's what the president also said, Senator Ping kagabi. Ang sabi po niya, while he is accepting the current setup, basta po makapasok labas ang ating fishermen, ang ating Navy, Coast Guard, he said that, but when they start to drill oil and minerals, that's the time, he said, he will actually act on it. If this happens, he says, we will drill our oil there. What I want to ask you first before you react to that is that, do you even think those Chinese boats numbering 200, naging 77, naging 40-something, and last video coming from the Coast Guard, there were 6 in Ayungin Shoal, but that was just about 4 days ago. Do you think they were just really fishing and they were seeking shelter, or they were doing something else?
200 vessels, militia. I don't think they're seeking shelter. Tsaka sabi naman ni Secretary Lorenzana, wala namang bagyo doon, fair weather naman. So ano yung i-seek shelter ng mga Chinese boats? And numbering 200, come on, we were not born yesterday, Pinky. Alam naman natin kung ano yung ginagawa nila. They're building structures there. The same way that they built structures in Panatag Shoal and in Scarborough Shoal.
And because of this stand of the president, no, even prior to him speaking about it last night, na sinasabi niyo, it's almost an implication that we are surrendering or wala tayong magawa. Let's go to that Viper group, Senator Lacson. Do you think there is some truth to those rumors about a group of retired and active officers withdrawing support to the president then and then after the statement of the president last night?
I don't think so, no. And Secretary Lorenzana and the Chief of Staff have already denied and tagged that rumor as fake news. So the president remains very popular among military men, active and retired. He has massive support from the men in uniform, not only from the armed forces of the Philippines, but the PNP and the other uniform services as well. So I don't think it will come to that, withdrawing support, the military and uniform personnel withdrawing support from the president. I don't think it will happen.
Could there be rumblings or restlessness among retired and active officers due to the president's stand on the West Philippine Sea?
Well, I heard some, complaints coming from middle grade officers and even some high-ranking officers of the military, because much as they would want to protect our territories, parang meron talagang guidance coming from higher headquarters not to go for it or just restrain from doing it.
And because you're hearing their complaints, could this possibly snowball into something else, sir?
No, I don't think so. As I said, the president remains very popular and he enjoys massive support from the super majority of the men in uniform, both active and retired. I don't think it will come to that. There are rumblings and complaints, but it will not escalate into a situation na magwi-withdraw ng support ang armed forces sa presidente. I would say that with certainty, knowing, I'm the chairman of the Defense and Security Committee of the Senate, and I've been in touch with most of the high-ranking military officers, and I would tell you that he really enjoys support from them.
Senator Panfilo, Ping Lacson, we need to take a very short break. The Source will be right back. You're watching The Source on CNN Philippines. Our source today, Senator Ping Lacson. Just quickly, sir, I wanted to talk about the community pantry because I do know that you also tweeted about this. But before we go to your tweet, I wanted to get your reaction first na yung pong sa Maginhawa, where it all started, si Ana Patricia Noon, she suspended the operations today. She announced it, I believe, on Facebook that they will be suspending today's community pantry due to red tagging in some government social media pages. Is this concerning to you, sir?
Yes, very much so. Because how could, I don't know how feeding the hungry, doing a humanitarian act like, putting up these community pantries or food pantries for that matter, could be interpreted as part of overthrowing the government. As a background, Pinky, matagal na ito. In the United States, it started way back in 1967. They called it food plan or food pantry. Dalawang fronts nga ito, either direct or yung tinatag na warehouse. Yung frontline na tinatawag, directly feeding the hungry. And yung warehouse, providing parang siya yung wholesaler na hindi naman binibenta, but of course supplying the frontline pantries. And I cannot see, or I still would like to find an explanation for that statement because I read about it na resorting to communism. The only similarities between community pantries and communism are the first 7 letters, communi. Aside from the 7 letters, wala akong makitang similarity because these are purely humanitarian acts from some of our countrymen who wanted to, whether they're subliminally relaying a message to government that they should do better than what they're doing in addressing the pandemic. Hindi ba dapat encourage pa nga natin instead of, as you said, red tag them?
So what do you think is happening? Because there are reports, Senator Ping, na may ilang mga pulis na pumupunta doon sa community pantry itself. And they're asking sino sila, which organization they belong to. I think pati cellphone numbers are hinihingi. What is this? How would you describe what the police is doing? In fact, there was a post na tatanungin yung personal profile ng organizer.
In the absent any solid proof na infiltrated or may inclination na mag-destabilize yung community pantries, I think it's ill-advised, even deplorable, that police officers would suspect these people of engaging in destabilization. Kasi kitang-kita naman nag-mushroom na nga, nag-sprout na nga eh. The only possible explanation is, and ito rin yung naging concern sa other countries, hindi lang naman US ito eh, India, Japan, Hong Kong, maraming mga Asian countries na gumaya at naging popular ito in the 1980s. Pero naging concern, para nagiging competition sa government pagdating sa welfare provision. Parang nate-threaten yung government na yung impression nagiging inutil or hindi nagke-care more than these people would care for yung kapwa nila sa community. So that's the only possible explanation for quote-unquote threatening the community pantry organizers na infiltrated or sabi mo nga i-red tag. I think that should stop. And government should encourage some more. Of course, there are health protocols that should be followed. Pero dapat payagan natin, ito na nga naging problema natin, yung shortcomings natin from the very start. Parang over-regulation yung pag-handle natin ng pandemic. Yung private sector want to help or wanted to help, and even the local government units, but national government keeps on issuing too many regulations to a point na stunted na yung efforts ng private sector and even the local government units.
And Senator, what would you like to say to those organizers? Maybe let's start with yun nga si Ana Patricia noon na sinuspend nga dahil nga para na rin daw sa for their own protection. And maybe some definitely some will continue. Maybe yung iba din ho might have to take a step back. What would you like to say to them, sir?
Well, they should not be discouraged, and people in the community should rally behind them, and they should be supported. As I said, they should be encouraged some more instead of stepping back, because they're helping the community in their own little way. As I said, yung community pantry in the Philippines is an inspiration born out of desperation. Sabi natin strong word yung desperation. Pero di ba, even subliminally, parang they're sending a message to without intending to, they're effectively sending a message to government: do better than what you're doing now, because if not, we're taking matters into our own hands in a positive way.
Still two issues I'd like to discuss with you: the vaccination pace, sir, because we talked about that the last time, and of course the pork imports, but we need to take a very short break. The Source will be right back. Senator, let's talk about the vaccination pace. I'm just going to run through numbers very quickly as we're running out of time. So far, we've vaccinated 1.4 million doses, administered rather. Yung 1.4 na yon, 1.2 received their first dose. Yung 200,000 naka-complete na po doon sa second dose. I remember when nag-usap po tayo before, pinag-uusapan po ninyo yung pace ng vaccination. At that time, mid-March, sabi nyo, if magpatuloy tayo sa ganitong current vaccination pace, aabot tayo ng 11 years and I believe 8 months bago magkaroon tayo ng herd immunity, which is 70 million Filipinos supposedly vaccinated twice. What are your thoughts now? Ito ho bang vaccination pace natin, gaano kaya ang itatagal nito before we can achieve herd immunity?
I've gotten tired of computing, Pinky. But having said that, I just hope that we accelerate some more or further yung pace ng vaccination. Remember yung AstraZeneca, because I have a PMA classmate, who was given the first jab. Of course, senior citizen, kaya napunta doon sa mga priority list. Ang tanong ko sa kanya, kailan yung second jab mo?
Opo.
Sabi niya, I do not know because naubos. So
Yeah.
if that is, that tells a lot about planning. No, alam naman natin na 2 jobs per person. Bakit mo ubusin yung stock na nandito? Di ba dapat nakatabi na yung second shot ng bawat binigyan mo ng first shot? What if? Hindi naman pwedeng binigyan mo ng first shot pagkatapos bahala na si Batman kung may darating. Kung walang dumating, nasayang lang yung first shot kasi wala yung sinasabi nating booster, di ba?
Booster.
So that says a lot about planning ng concerned health authorities. Bakit nila inubos?
Hindi ho kayo sang-ayon dun sa naging eventual formula ng IATF na let's just give everybody the first jab as much as possible. But I know you said you're tired of computing. I computed it, Senator Ping, Ang lumalabas dun sa
Okay.
1.4 jabs. Kung di po ako nagkakamali, it's almost about 820,000 per month administered, ito na lang po, palagay niyo ho ba, abot pa tayo doon sa 50 million inoculated by the end of December?
Just like any other Filipino, I just hope that we get there sooner than later before it's too late. But at the pace that we are doing right now, parang medyo tall order. But the private sector is now in full swing. I heard Mr. Ricky Rason announcing that by June, darating yung 20 million or mag-start nang dumating yung 20 million doses ng Moderna for the private sector. Because maraming nag-signify dyan. And I know this for a fact because I'm in close contact with the people close to him na nagko-consolidate noong private sector or some business establishments na nag-signify for their employees. So that's a good move. Ang puna nga natin, bakit hindi mo palargahan yung private sector under supervision naman sila ng Department of Health or IATF? Parang sa halip na tulungan mo na lang para mag-accelerate, parang na-stymie pa yung kanilang efforts, lalo sila nagkakaaba-abala. Remember, we heard of dropping the ball incidents, not twice, not once, not twice, but more. So we should learn from the lesson of the past, and to hear the president saying that they're doing an excellent job, again, sends a wrong message to those concerned na, okay naman pala tayo, so wala na tayo adjustments gagawin because we're doing a fine job. Di ba ganun ang implication? Instead of looking for other
we doing a fine job, sir,
means,
para
other
sa inyo?
solutions to accelerate, kung okay naman pala ginagawa, ganito na lang talaga tayo.
Are we doing a fine job, sir, para po sa inyo?
I don't think so because yun nga, we're lagging behind it. Saka if we're doing a fine job, dapat hindi tumataas yung mortality, hindi tumataas yung infection. But day in and day out, laging record high.
Okay.
Actually,
Senator,
when you start hearing friends, acquaintances na namamatay, it means na talaga marami. Kasi before, meron tayong narinig na namamatay pero hindi natin kilala. Pero ngayon, Pinky, marami, ako mismo marami akong kakilala, even friends, na nag-succumb. Anong ibig sabihin nun? Ibig sabihin, laganap na talaga. And baka yung nakikita nating statistics, yung mga nare-report, hindi yun ang actual or accurate. Because I know, for example, a barangay in my town, home city, yung Imus. Yung buong block, alam ko, infected because yung house electrician namin is from that block. And he was reporting to me na halos lahat doon merong flu, merong symptoms. Hindi naman makapag-test, swab test, because 4,000 ang sinisingil. So if that's a fine job that we're doing or the health authorities are doing, then I don't know what's not a fine job.
Sir, please just give me, I'll give you 30 seconds to answer this. Kasi nga yung pork import, I know the Senate has been very busy on this, the pork importation. Tuloy na po yan, effective na po. The President said, obviously tuloy ito until, pwede naman daw i-recall once the supply actually stabilizes. Is that good enough for the senators?
Well, ang problema kasi sa record nila, sa data na pinipresent nila, based on analysis, no, look, for example, yung 50% contraction ni-register ng hotel and restaurant operations, ano, hindi nila kinount yun eh. Ang sabi nila, kailangan nila ng 380 plus thousand metric tons. Kaya umabot ng 400,000 metric tons yung kailangang itaas yung MAV. Ano. But then, pre-pandemic, 7.1, at least 7 million tourists ang naandyan, eating pork. No, not all of them. But kaya nag-register ng 50% contraction. Di ba dapat yung tourist arrivals na nawala during the pandemic, dapat i-consider mo sa computation or sa consideration. Pero ang nangyari, parang baliwala yon. So if we count 7 million foreign tourists who stopped eating pork because they're eating pork somewhere else, because Secretary Calchua replied or responded to my question na hindi, Filipinos are eating pork somewhere or somewhere else. Kaya hindi rin nabawasan. Look, they're eating pork somewhere else, but not in the Philippines. Because they had stopped coming as tourists. So that's 7 million times 15 kilograms per capita. That's already 105 million kilograms of pork. So bumaba rin yung demand. And Pinky, yung importation, this is data from the Bureau of Customs. Ano? Yung sa 2020, down to 76,000 metric tons na lang ang dumating ang na-import, coming from 265 and then 250 plus in 2018 and 2019. So that tells a lot, ano? Or that says a lot na bumaba talaga yung demand or bumaba consumption. Even importation, ang laki ng binaba. So bakit hindi na consider yon when they recommended to the President na itaas yung MAV from 54,000 metric tons to 404,000 metric tons and ibaba yung tariff from 30 to 5. As it is, yung sa 30%, ang laki na ng kita ng mga importers, pati yung retailers. We gave them the computation.
Senator, I know that there will be another hearing on this and a lot of questions will be asked to Umpusa, Department of Agriculture. In the meantime, Senator Panfilo, Ping Lacson, maraming salamat po sa inyong oras.
Maraming salamat, Pinky.
And thank you for joining us here on The Source. I'm Pinky Webb. You're watching CNN Philippines.